How many people would have thought gold would hit $2,400 when he was writing and it was languishing at $400 and $500? And the same thing will be true about silver when it finally makes its move. And there's so many fundamentals that are growing by the day that you talk about all the time, and I try to talk about that will make that happen. But the one thing that I've learned along the way, is that the fundamentals that we see, the logic, if you will, sometimes has an inverse correlation with outcome, at least in terms of when we think it will. But in the end, when you base your conclusions upon mathematics and economics with a sprinkling of old school logic upon it, typically these things pan out, and we're beginning to see some of that right now.
In today's market recap, Indian silver imports surge to record levels. Indians are known to have a love affair with gold. India ranks as the number 2 gold-consuming country in the world, behind only China. But Indians are also pretty fond of silver. In fact, India is the world's biggest silver consumer. Silver imports skyrocketed by 260% in February, hitting a record high of 2,295 tons. That was up from 637 tons in January, according to a report in the Economic Times of India. The Times said this surge in Indian silver buying could support global prices trading near their highest in 3 years. To put the import surge into perspective, India imported 3,225 tons for all of 2023. Indian imports are cyclical in nature. In 1 year, imports may be very high, and then the following year they may fall. Since imports fell in 2023 after record buying in 2022, we can expect imports to pick up in 2024. Industrial silver demand is projected to rise 8% to a record 632 million ounces this year, pushing overall offtake to near record levels. According to the Silver Institute, investment in photovoltaics, power grid, and 5G networks, growth in consumer electronics, and rising vehicle production all helped drive industrial demand higher. On the supply side, global mined silver is anticipated to fall by 2% year on year to 820 million ounces, driven by lower output from operations in Mexico and Peru. Silver isn't priced for these supply and demand dynamics. This could present a great investment opportunity. Now we'll show you the best clips of the latest interview. Hit the like button, smash the subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you do not miss out our daily videos. Enjoy the episode.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's really unusual that we see, first of all, India, right? 400 million ounces of silver they imported over the last 2 years, which ironically is pretty darn close to the amount. I'm not saying it's 1-to-1, but for me, there are the 400 million ounces almost drained off of COMEX. I'm not saying it's 1-to-1. In the last 2 years, that's about what India has imported, but their numbers in February alone are up 260% in imports. Last year, they imported 3,625 tons for the entire year. They're already up to 2,300 tons in just the first 2 months of the year. And so this is, again, being completely ignored by the mainstream. And when we talk about gold and silver, in particular, silver rising the way that it has, 10% up a week ago, and with great volatility, mind you, but continuing to surge higher, was, it was $18 not too long ago. It was $20 not too long ago, and here we are right now at almost 29. This has happened and Rob's a buddy of mine, and certainly I think when you have a shop like he does, where the public comes in, no one would have a better understanding of this, that the public has been selling into this rally. Maybe it is due to capitulation. Maybe it is due to the fact that people just need money with the going higher. I'm not quite sure. The disbelief that it will continue to rally, I am not sure. You look at the ETF participation, I don't know, 8 billion ounces or dollars rather, $8 billion worth have been sold out of the ETFs in this rally, and it continues to move higher. And, which is really interesting. And I mentioned that to my buddy Bill Holter, And he says, well, to me, that's the ETFs. That's the share redemption. They're coming in and taking the physical possession. A lot of it is of share redemption that is not as easily noticed as if it were delivered off of COMEX. And he may be right. That has a portion of it. But the moral of the story is that in the face of rising real rates, if we believe the CPI, right, where you're getting 5.5% on a 6-month treasury, in the face of a very strong dollar, in the face of these things, as the public is, really, if you look at the Gold Eagle sales, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny amount compared to where it's been. And I mentioned gold. To me, gold and silver are the same thing in terms of demand. But if you look at the ETFs that have really been bled down as people have been focused more on NVIDIA and Bitcoin and things that, making them lots and lots of money, this rally has gone completely unnoticed by the West. In fact, selling into this rally, and yet it continues to move higher. I find it to be amazing. And then when you realize that the current president in Mexico, who appears to be on the way out, has an initiative in place to change the Constitution. I mean, they're the largest producer of silver in the world, maybe only second to Peru, to completely ban and change the Constitution to ban open pit mining. And the successor, a woman who's ahead in the polls, who looks like she'll win, she's all for that ban. So you're talking about taking tremendous amount of silver offline in an environment where we've experienced a structural deficit in supply demand over the last 2 years.
On today's news recap, silver prices stabilized after economic data showed signs of persistent inflation. Silver prices edged up by 0.23% amid a backdrop of rising U.S. Treasury yields fueled by lingering concerns over persistent inflation. The latest economic data indicated a slowdown in U.S. economic growth for the first quarter, but an uptick in inflationary pressures suggested that the Federal Reserve might delay interest rate cuts until September. Despite the tempered economic growth, positive indicators in the labor market were observed, signaling continued strength in the employment sector. Looking ahead, the Silver Institute Industry Association forecasts a 17% increase in the global silver deficit to 215.3 million troy ounces in 2024. Silver's diverse applications in jewelry, electronics, electric vehicles, solar panels, and investment purposes underpin its sustained demand amidst a structural market deficit entering its fourth consecutive year. First, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss out our daily videos. Enjoy the episode.
And analysts that are petitioning the Canadian government to change silver from an industrial metal to a critical metal, to one that is needed in so many things, not just in green and digital applications, but in just about everything, including military. And I find it also very interesting. And this is something that I don't think gets enough attention, is the military application. Now, I gave a speech at Jay Martin's conference in Vancouver, the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, and I think everyone should check that out. It's a great conference. He does it every year up in Vancouver. But I did 2 years ago, and I mentioned that I always believed there was 500 ounces of silver in a Tomahawk cruise missile. And if you Google it, it will pop up. And I met a gentleman there. In fact, he gave me this cup. He works for the Department of Defense, and he said that he actually worked on the Patriot missile program while he was up there this year. I gave a different speech this year, but he came up to me in the audience and he said, the things I'm going to tell you are declassified, so don't worry, but I worked on the Patriot missile program, and I got to tell you, you're right. There is nearly 500 ounces of silver in the tip of a Tomahawk cruise missile. And so I find it interesting that the Silver Institute, who I always thought put out really accurate or good information anyway, they omit this. There is no designation for military or aerospace. And when you look at the amount of wars that are being fought, when you look at the amount of munitions that are being made and sold to other countries, whether or not we're using them or not, it becomes very compelling and interesting to wonder, why would a handful of banks be short the level that they are, naked short, to such a degree, maybe the largest concentrated short position on any commodity ever traded on COMEX? Why? on silver. And maybe when you take a step back and realize there's a very fine line between conspiracy and reality, maybe indeed it has to do with the never-ending wars that the military-industrial complex seems to be waging and or funding. And ask yourself, does it make sense, or is it as dumb as a mud wall to be naked short in a commodity like silver in a monetary environment we have right now in countries like India buying everything that's not nailed down? And the last thing, and I'll get your comment, is there's rumors all over the internet right now, and people that I talk to who have relationships in China, that the Chinese government is now urging their populace to focus more on silver than on gold, to accumulate silver. As Alistair McLeod would say, they have 38,000 metric tons of gold, 18,000 owned by the people and 20 by the state. Now they're saying, look, silver is the place to be, not only from a value standpoint, but maybe it's the Achilles heel of the West. So, I don't know, but I guess I would simply say that to me, silver is the most undervalued, underappreciated asset, and maybe the asset value of a generation. And I don't say that lightly. I don't know if I've ever seen anything that has better supply-demand fundamentals and asymmetrical risk-reward portfolio or asymmetrical risk-reward, what am I trying to say again? Asymmetrical risk-reward background. I mean, you look at it, the downside is virtually nothing. The upside is extraordinary.
What do you think of the silver situation in India? Will a massive supply disruption cause gold and silver prices to skyrocket? Post in the comments section if you've continued accumulating precious metals over the past few weeks, and watch this video right here because you'll love it. I see you on the other side.